looks like it's working.
I think we're going.
All right, test two.
Test two, yeah. No, we just had our recording stop unexpectedly the first time out. I'm Michael,
Bryce.
I'm Nick.
and today we're going to cover some of the comparisons between the Ottoman Empire and the colonial Europe and how the Ottomans responded, as well as treatment of women in colonial era Europe versus the Ottoman Empire. So our first question that we'd like to discuss is, how did the Ottomans adapt to the colonial period and modernity? And there's a few things that they did in order to do so. But before we get into those, we need to talk about what is modernity and what's the definition of it. And as we found in week 12 when Pat was lecturing, there's a standard working definition and there's a cynical definition, right? So standard working definition is as follows. Being modern is purposefully evaluating each aspect of human society to find what works, what doesn't, and what needs improvement roughly according to Enlightenment ideals. By doing that act, modernity creates a traditional order that it holds as its opposition. And when we discuss the cynical definition, we talk being modern is whatever the inhabitants of major cultural centers of the West, like London, Paris, New York, or LA, are doing at the moment. And when Europe started to colonize the Middle East, Africa, essentially the entire world, really, the Ottomans, they saw it as, oh, shit, we need to catch up or get left behind. Starting with that Ottoman clothing reform in 1826. They wanted to match England, France, these European countries in their attire. Furthermore, a few other things that we can cover here. A second reform that the Ottomans had was that of the Tanzimat reforms. There were two, to be precise. First came in 1839, November 3rd. That was under Abdul Maked I. I butchered that name, sorry, Pat. And the second reform came in 1856 under Abdulaziz I. So that first reform was in order to win European diplomatic support. The Ottomans needed help against Muhammad Ali from Arabia. 1856, that second reform came in the wake of the Crimean War. Again, the Ottomans needed European diplomatic support. And another reform that started to reflect the modernity of the Ottoman Empire was school changing from a religious-centric institution to a secular institution. We see that Ottomans, and this was even before the true colonization period, we saw that the Ottomans created a naval engineering school in 1773. We saw a military engineering school in 1793, a medical school in 1827, military science in 1834. Further expanding with the Civil Service School in 1859. That was reorganized in 1877 as the Political Science Department at the University of Ankara. So to summarize, guys. The Ottomans, they expanded schools into a secular thing. They made reforms in agreement with the Europeans for diplomatic support. Those were two big ways that the Ottomans became modernized, quote unquote.
If you take a step back, like the Crimean War that you mentioned is kind of the kickoff for the modernization of the military in the Ottoman Empire, because they were like holding their own against like the rival states nearby, but when they got like kind of whooped by the Russians, and they're like, crap, we kind of need to get our shit together and modernize. The rest of the world has like better weapons, better military, better navy. So that's when they like sent people out to Europe to see what they were doing in their countries and their militaries. And to modernize, they had to abolish the Janissaries, which had been a long running thing in the Ottoman Empire, but they had become like kind of corrupt, and it would stand in the way of the modernization. So they hired foreign military advisors and stuff because Yeah, they had to.
Precisely, it was like we said earlier, catch up or get left behind, and one of the ways to do so was to get bigger and beefier with the military.
Mm.
Very good.
I mean, for sure, when you're feeling pressure like that,
Yeah.
like you gotta act quick, you know. So
100%, 100%.
And the Tanzimat was important because it guaranteed the legal equality for Muslims and non-Muslims, which is like, and we still see it today, like the like stigma that if you go to a Middle Eastern country that they'll hate you if you're Christian or Jewish. But like, I mean, it's been long. This is from the 1800s where they were making each other equal, and that
Yeah.
brings back to the fez in the Ottoman Empire, where they all, instead of wearing like a yarmulke or whatever the other religions were wearing, they all wore a fez to show that they're all equal.
yeah.
Mhm. That was a universal. It was becoming a universal culture, and we see that in so many Islamic-ruled countries and empires. It's like it was very much an integration of multiple cultures
Yeah.
to make one, and that
Just
was
a unification of a huge community, you know, all working together side by side.
Precisely. And I guess with that, we can bridge to our second question. How did the modernization of the Ottoman Empire affect women? What were some of the causes? What were some of the results for women in this new empire?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like there were a lot of advancements, you know, especially in the educational side of things, except the Europeans were constantly critiquing like Islamic norms and the practices and seeing women as inferior. So, I mean, inside their own culture, I feel like they were doing pretty good, but with the modernity the Europeans were bringing, it didn't really help.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that statement.
I mean, with the modernity, like in the like modernization of the Ottoman Empire, I mean, women gained a lot more of like structural like equality in like the actual government, because before it was kind of based off like local laws because they were more tribal, and it was based more off Sharia law. Where now with the new like modern government, they're more like structurally in place like practices for women, especially within like the right to divorce. Like before, I mean, it was up to like the Quran and Sharia law, and like now it's like they had more rights to actually get a divorce and inheritance and owning land, and they women weren't educated much before. I mean, they were more compared to Western cultures because women were supposed to just stay home and cook and take care of the kids. But I mean, in the Ottoman Empire, they were a huge part of the silk industry. That's another thing with the modernity.
Jewish, Muslim, and Christian
Mhm.
women, all of them, all worked at such a large rate
Mhm.
in that silk industry. And to circle back, I mean, yeah, that property, the right to own property for women, I think that's huge. I think that's a huge step up in rights for women. If you look at like colonial Europe or even the early U.S. as we know it in this time frame, you know,
Yeah.
women couldn't vote, they couldn't own property, they
Rare
were property
instances of
their
land,
husbands. Yeah.
I mean, like they made women's schools in the Ottoman Empire, which is like insane compared to I'm sure Europe didn't have that at the time.
Yeah. No, that's like so progressive, I feel like. For
Yeah.
The time, yeah.
The time frame, absolutely.
And women could be teachers, nurses, like scholars, and they
Yeah.
were able to work in like newspapers and like stuff like that, which is just so far ahead of their time.
And to piggyback on that, it really was only the super high class, high society people in the Ottomans that had, you know, multiple wives, women that weren't working. Working was a way of life for the majority of
Yeah.
Ottoman women.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like when we were covering like the different classes, you know, of their society during class, like, you know, the middle class was doing everything
Everything.
the same as a European, you know, middle class family would do. So,
Anything else to add on that topic, or?
I guess a question, because I don't know, is like how fast did they come to modernize like their schools and change from like a more of a religious like standing like educational, you know, like focus to secular?
Right.
Like, obviously they knew they had to catch up, you know, and like do stuff quickly, but I wonder like how fast.
I mean, they kind of had to move fast because the industrialization in Europe, like, kind of was shrinking the silk industry, especially in like the major cities of like Byrce, like that we talked about in class. Um, and yeah, I mean, they had, like, that was the main part of the women. Like, they were the main workforce of the cottage industry, and so yeah, they had to industrialize quick because
yeah.
that their main source of income from the outside world was shrinking because of the French silk. Well, I think that's what we talked about in class, right? Yeah, I mean, they they had to catch up.
Well, yeah, it was
or
becoming
shrink.
cheap. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as we look at how it affected women, the Ottoman Empire modernizing, right? More women in the workforce. That's the main component. We can transition to what was the treatment of women in the Ottoman Empire like compared to the treatment of women in the West? And I actually have an excellent passage from our Rethinking Universalism reading that can shine some light on that topic. So I'm just going to read verbatim. Olympe Eduard opened her 1867 book, L'Orient Esses. I cannot speak French to save my life. Pat, don't roast me for that. By inverting the Orientalist gaze, following in the footsteps of other European writers like Montesquieu, again, butchered more French, sorry. She used the Orient as a lens to highlight the shortcomings of her own society. Through the observations of a Syrian man she claimed she had met at the Grand Hotel, she highlighted the effect that our city, our laws, our customs produces on Orientals. His observations were not flattering to the French, for he reported that despite such an advanced state of civilization, French culture offered little for his compatriots to admire, especially where gender relations were concerned. He found it to be a world overturned, for in France it was women who kept harems. In a reference to the system of regulated prostitution, he observed that while men bought women, the latter gave up none of their freedom, and he was mystified as to why men would want to associate with women who were regarded as so immoral. Yet he was also amused to find that later these same men sold themselves in their turn when they married young and honest women for their dowries. He expressed amazement at French wives' freedom to go out to receive whomever they pleased. But at the same time, he felt that this freedom that French women, that Western women had, it was an illusionary freedom, he noted. For if they are exposed to sin by the liberty one allows them, they do not find any more indulgence. A husband has the right to kill his wife if she fails in honor. So make with that statement what you will, but a Syrian man, a Middle Eastern man, sees the West as an illusionary freedom for women. He sees that fundamentally the East has more rights in regards to women.
Going off that, another question. Do you think the Ottomans were better in the long term? I mean, they collapsed after World War I, but hypothetically speaking, do you think they're better off modernizing, especially in a cultural sense, to match more Western ideologies, like especially in like the family households, because they're more like a nuclear family after modernization? And do you think they're better off that way, or sticking to their cultural norms instead of swaying to the outside influence?
Well,
I think outside influence would have happened either way eventually.
I mean, they were fighting off colonization for as long as they could, and they still did. Even with the modernization, they were really good at that.
Yeah, and it was really the decentralization of the government that made the Ottomans collapse anyway, right? You know, I don't think the culture itself and changing the culture caused the collapse of the Ottomans per se.
Yeah.
But that's a very good question. I'll have to stew on that for a sec. What's your take on?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I think they're better off modernizing. I mean, as we saw, like, it added a lot for women's rights, and I mean, it kept them afloat. If not, they would have been conquered by Britain, France, Russia, whoever, if they didn't modernize. So I mean, they didn't really have a choice, unless they wanted to go back to being, I forgot what they're called, the ones, the Bedouin tribes.
Yeah, Bedouin tribes, yeah.
So, I think they benefited from it. Yeah.
For sure. Bryce, what's your take?
I mean, well, going back to the article you read from, I sort of agree but sort of disagree at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like the Syrian man, or the author, right? That was his take on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically saying, like, Western women have less rights for being able to, like, go out at night, even though they could be, like, killed by their husband. I still think that's, like, an advancement in, like, freedom that he can't, like, comprehend in a way. Like, I see his standpoint and, like, his rhetoric
Mm-hmm.
on the take, and, like, I do agree, but at the same time, like, I think, like, being able to, you know, go out and enjoy yourself, you know, without, like, feeling tied down by, like, a man or a woman, you know, it could go either way,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
No, hot take on human rights. You know, you should have the right to not get killed by your significant other, and you should have the right to be able to experience the city, experience the world.
Yeah. So I mean, it's yeah.
Oh, dude, we're
and then
like,
I mean, he's not out there killing his wife, you know, but
yeah. And with that being said, we're coming up on the 17-minute mark.
Okay.
We don't want to overstay our welcome to our listeners far and wide across the world. It's just going to be Pat and his daughter. But, yeah.
We didn't drop any F-bombs, I don't think.
I said shit once. Oh, now I just said it twice. But, yeah, I think that concludes our podcast. And hopefully you learned something new about the Ottoman Empire and how they modernized today.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Peace.
Thank you.